think that's where the Supreme Court might come out on this in the future, but it's hard to tell. So you have to kind of look at it from both ways. But I think there is a real concern that, you know,
and the House returns for votes on the bill that will ban abortions after 20 weeks.
Passage of H.R. 1797 and the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1896. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on passage of H.R. 1797, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 77, H.R. 1797, a bill to amend Title 18, United States Code, to protect pain-capable unborn children in the District of Columbia and for other purposes.
The question is on passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House returns from a short recess to vote on a bill they've been debating this afternoon, a bill by Republican Trent Franks of Arizona that would ban all abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. It would make exceptions for instances of rape, incest, or if the abortion is necessary to save the life of a pregnant woman. This is a 15-minute vote. One 5-minute vote will follow that, and that'll be it for roll call votes this afternoon in the House. They did also this afternoon do general debate on the Farm Bill, the 5-year Farm Bill. There are 200 amendments filed against that bill, and that amendment debate later on this week.
On this vote, the yeas are 228, the nays are 196. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Reichert, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1896, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1896, a bill to amend Part D of Title IV of the Social Security Act to ensure that the United States can comply fully with the obligations of the Hague Convention of 23 November 2007 on the international recovery of child support and other forms of family maintenance and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And it should be the last vote of the day after the House, by a vote of 228 to 196, approves a bill that would ban all abortions after the 20th week of pregnancy. The Obama administration has issued a veto threat against the legislation. The House in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern for morning hour speeches. Legislative debate beginning at noon. It's likely that they will take up the Farm Bill amendments, 200 amendments filed on the bill. The Rules Committee meeting this afternoon for consideration of those amendments to the Farm Bill. Of course, we'll have live coverage of the House tomorrow here on C-SPAN. Also on the House side, the Judiciary Committee's been meeting today. They've been working on an immigration bill on the House side. This is Trey Gowdy's bill, the Associated Press writing that it's called the Strengthen and Fortify Enforcement Act, which would empower state and local officials to enforce federal immigration laws, make passport and visa fraud into aggravated felonies subject to deportation, funnel money into building more detention centers, and crack down on immigrants suspected of posing dangers. That's on the House side. The Senate continues their debate on their immigration and border security bill. They held several amendment votes this afternoon. Also this afternoon, the Congressional Budget Office releasing a report on the effects of the proposed immigration legislation in the Senate, saying that that bill would cut deficits by $197 billion over 10 years. The Associated Press writes that the CBO said the bill would add $262 billion in new spending and tax credits over 10 years, a sum more than covered by the $459 billion in increased revenues, according to that CBO report. And of course, the debate continues in the Senate, and you can follow that on our companion network, C-SPAN 2. Tomorrow on Capitol Hill, there will be a Tea Party rally, and the Huffington Post reports this afternoon that organizers of the Tea Party Patriots rally said they expect that tomorrow's rally on the Hill, called Audit the IRS, to be, quote, the largest demonstration since 2010. Look for live coverage on the C-SPAN networks tomorrow afternoon, C-SPAN 3, and also on cspan.org.
On this vote, the yeas are...
Mr. Price of Georgia. Off aye on no for Mr. Price of Georgia. Mr. Nadler. Mr. Nadler votes aye.
The nays are 27. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. What purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I present a privilege report for printing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany H.R. 2410, a bill making appropriations for agriculture, rural development, Food and Drug Administration, and related agencies' programs for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2014, and for other purposes.
Referred to the union calendar and ordered printed. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 21, points of order are reserved. The chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Rogers of Kentucky for Monday, June 17th through Wednesday, June 19th.
Without objection, the request is granted. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
To address and begin our remarks.
The gentleman will suspend. The House is not in order. The House will come to order. Please remove your conversations from the chamber. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. Please remove your conversations to the gallery. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the House just passed the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which will protect the unborn from some heinous conduct by certain physicians. I know I've got good colleagues. Mr. Speaker, House not in order.
Gentleman's correct. The House is not in order. The House will come to order. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know there are good citizens on both sides of the abortion issue and are heartfelt, but a free, honest, and caring society cannot at any term tolerate the conduct by the physician in Philadelphia and those like him who would create the most savage, barbaric abortion methods to take the life of children that were 20 weeks or older. And this bill goes a long way toward addressing that cruelty that we cannot let stand in this country. And I'm proud of my colleagues who voted for that this evening and appreciate the passage of this bill. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
I'd like to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the 2013 Farm Bill, which will help ensure a safe, affordable, and abundant food supply for all Americans. I represent one of the largest agricultural districts east of the Mississippi, and I'm proud to represent Florida's dairy and vegetable farmers, citrus and sugar growers, and beef cattle ranchers. This bill will serve them well, and it will serve Florida's taxpayers well, too. The Farm Bill includes a much-needed reforms to agricultural programs. It provides relief from unnecessary federal mandates. It saves the taxpayers $35 billion and reduces the size of government by eliminating or consolidating more than 100 programs. In particular, I'm pleased that this bill addresses the growing problem in my district of citrus disease. Diseases like greening, have already wiped out over one quarter of the citrus acreage in Florida. If we don't reverse this trend soon, we won't have enough crop to sustain our existing processing plants, and the problem will only spiral from there. Florida will lose jobs and our economy will suffer, but this will impact all Americans. Because if Florida isn't growing oranges, you won't be putting orange juice on your breakfast table.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, if we want to have a safe and abundant affordable food supply, we need to pass the Farm Bill. With that, I thank you and yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
I would like to address the House.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bring attention to the issue of dredging our nation's small ports, a critical issue for hardworking folks in Washington State, Southwest Washington in particular, in Wahkiakum County, Chinook, Ilwaco, and other parts of my district. This is a jobs issue in my region and for those along waterways throughout our nation. The issue is this: ports are lifelines to several towns and communities across the Columbia River and the Pacific Coast in my district, and they are literally being choked off by lack of maintenance dredging. One of my local newspapers, the Chinook Observer, commented, if a farmer were unable to ship his wheat because a road became impassable within our federal highway system, the federal government would rightly fix this issue immediately. It is no different for the dire circumstances facing our nation's navigable waterways. We need to address this issue as soon as possible. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I've taken the action in search of a swift solution, and thankfully the committee included $1 billion of Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund for dredging and maintenance of waterways in our Energy and Water Development Appropriations Bill. We must maintain our nation's maritime ports, and with that I yield back.
Are there any further requests for 1-minute speeches? Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2013, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate this time to address my colleagues about one of the most important issues that we face in this country, and that is hunger. We have a problem in the United States of America, I'm sad to say, where we have 50 million of our fellow citizens who are hungry. 17 million are kids. This is the case in the richest, most powerful nation on the planet. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Food is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And everybody in this country ought to have a right to food. And that should not even be controversial. Yet we have a farm bill that we will begin debating tomorrow that cuts SNAP, which used to be the food stamp program. It cuts it by $20.5 billion. That's billion with a B. What does that mean? It means that 2 million people who currently receive the benefit today, tomorrow will lose it. It means that over 200,000 kids who are eligible for free breakfast and lunch at school today will lose that benefit tomorrow. Those aren't my numbers. Those aren't the numbers of some liberal think tank. Those are the numbers by the Congressional Budget Office, CBO. They say that if the Farm Bill passes and if those numbers stay in, 2 million of our fellow citizens will lose their food benefit. Mr. Speaker, I find that unconscionable. We are trying to emerge from one of the worst economic recessions in our history. Record job losses over the last few years. We've had people of all backgrounds lose their jobs, find themselves working now in jobs that don't pay very much, struggling, trying to keep their families afloat. And one of the lifelines during this difficult economic time has been the SNAP program. It has enabled many families to be able to put food on the table. With SNAP, you can't use SNAP to buy a flat-screen TV. You can't use SNAP to buy a car. You can only use SNAP to buy food. That's what this is all about. And in the Farm Bill, for whatever reason, it was decided that rather than looking for savings in the crop insurance program, which we know is rife with abuse, rather than looking for savings in some of these special kind of giveaways to agribusinesses, these sweetheart deals, rather than trying to find savings there to put toward balancing our budget, it was decided to go after almost exclusively this one program, SNAP. Mr. Speaker, I heard up in the Rules Committee during our consideration of the amendments today, a number of people said, well, all we're doing is eliminating categorical eligibility. A lot of people don't know what categorical eligibility is. A lot of people who are supporting these cuts don't know what categorical eligibility is. Basically, this was a Republican idea to kind of streamline a lot of the bureaucracy and paperwork at the state level. So if you walked into if you qualified for welfare, that you would automatically be enrolled in the SNAP program. Doesn't mean you would automatically get a benefit. It means you would be enrolled in the program. And if you qualified for the benefit, you would get it. It was kind of one-stop shopping for people who were poor, for people who found themselves experiencing a difficult situation. It has saved states lots and lots and lots of money. It has made it easier for people during this economic difficulties to be able to get the benefits that, quite frankly, they're entitled to. And so when you eliminate categorical eligibility, what you do is you put an extra burden on states. States will end up having to pay more for additional bureaucracy. There'll be more paperwork. There'll be more confusion. The other thing that happens when you get rid of categorical eligibility is that you will make it more difficult for people who are eligible to get the benefit. And therefore, many people who are still experiencing tough times, who are eligible for a food benefit, will not be able to get it. Mr. Speaker, this used to be a bipartisan issue. And I remember during the 2008 Farm Bill, one of the things that saved that Farm Bill was the food and nutrition part of the Farm Bill. Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, who I'll yield to in a few minutes, working with then Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and I was happy to play a little bit of a role in it. Helped fight to up the nutrition program in the Farm Bill in 2008. As a result of that, we were able to pass a Farm Bill. And as a result of that, we were able to help millions and millions and millions of families. That's a good thing. But for whatever reason, in 2013, programs that help poor people have become controversial. My Republican friends have diminished and demeaned this program called SNAP. They have diminished the struggle of poor people. I said in the Rules Committee today that I reminded my colleagues in the Rules Committee today that the average food stamp benefit, the average SNAP benefit, is $1.50 a meal. $1.50 a meal. $4.50 a day. I mean, that's like a Starbucks, one of those fancy Starbucks coffees. That's what this is. This is not some overly generous benefit. This is not even an adequate benefit, quite frankly. But in some cases, it is a lifeline for many families. That's what it is. And, there are a number of us over this last week have been trying to dramatize the fact that this is a modest benefit, that we have lived on a food stamp budget for this last week. I got 2 more days to go, but I've lived on $1.50 a meal, $4.50 a day. It's hard. It's hard to be poor. It's hard to shop when you're poor. It's hard to plan meals when you're poor. It is, given the opportunity between being poor or being, able to be self-sustained, to be able to buy whatever food you want, whenever you want it, you would prefer the latter. Nobody enjoys being on this benefit. Some of my friends say that this creates a culture of dependency. Well, I remind those people who think that there are millions and millions and millions and millions of people in this country who work for a living, who earn so little that they still qualify for SNAP. They rely on SNAP to put food on the table. And by the way, that's not enough, so they go to food banks and food pantries to be able to add to their ability to be able to put food on the tables for their families. You know, in 1968, there was a CBS documentary entitled Hunger in America, and it created quite a stir because a lot of people in this country looked the other way and didn't realize that hunger was as bad as it was. George McGovern, a liberal Democrat from South Dakota, and Robert Dole, a conservative Republican from Kansas, got together and helped create the food stamp program now known as SNAP, helped create WIC, helped expand school meals for kids in schools, made sure that poor kids had access to schools, to meals during the summer. They worked in a bipartisan way and proudly in a bipartisan way, doing what they could to make sure that nobody in this country went hungry. And in the late 1970s, by the late 1970s, we almost eliminated hunger in America. I mean, this kind of bipartisan coalition produced incredible results that almost eliminated hunger in this country. And then in the 1980s, and then we started taking steps backwards, and today we have 50 million of our fellow citizens who are hungry. You know, I would say to my friends who are thinking about how to vote on this farm bill, you know, we should not have to choose between a good and adequate nutrition part of the farm bill and good and adequate farm programs. They should go together. In fact, you know, only you can buy with SNAP is food, so who benefits from food purchases? Well, farmers grow food, so farmers benefit from those purchases. So they're not separate and distinct. In fact, they're very, very much related. And this marriage between nutrition, you know, and farm programs has resulted in the passage of many important farm bills over the years. But for whatever reason, we find ourselves in a situation where that kind of coalition is breaking apart. And I regret that very, very much. I want a farm bill. I represent a lot of agriculture in my part of Massachusetts, but I want a farm bill. I want a good farm bill. But I'm not going to vote for a farm bill that makes hunger worse in America. That's not the legacy I think we want to have it here in this Congress. I think what we want to be able to do is to tell our constituents that we passed a good farm bill that not only helps our farmers, but also helps people who are struggling. You know, there is nothing wrong. In fact, there is everything right about our kind of dedication to helping the least fortunate among us. Those who have said that, well, we don't want to be known as the food stamp Congress, I would respond to them as follows. I am proud to live in a country that has a social safety net. I am proud to live in a country where we don't let people starve. I am proud to live in a country that has programs like SNAP, like WIC, like school feeding, to make sure that our citizens have enough to eat. You know, why is that all of a sudden controversial? Now, I want to tell you that SNAP is not a perfect program. You know, there has been some abuse in the program, to be sure, and to the credit of USDA and Secretary of Agriculture Vilsack under his leadership, there has been a concerted effort to go after those who abuse the program. And anybody who abuses this program, in my opinion, ought to have the book thrown at them. You know, these are taxpayer dollars going to support a program to help people get enough to eat. And when people abuse the program or misuse it, you know, we ought to throw the full extent of the law at them. They ought to be fined and in some cases even arrested when they abuse taxpayer dollars. But I will also say to my colleagues that SNAP, according to the General Accountability Office and according to a whole bunch of other studies, has one of the lowest error rates of any federal program. I only wish some of the missile programs in our Pentagon, under our Pentagon's jurisdiction, had as low an error rate, had as low of a record of abuse of taxpayer dollars as the SNAP program has. This is a good program. This is a good program. It can be better, and we should make it better. But let me say this. If you want to make it better, then maybe what we ought to have done in the Agriculture Committee is actually have a hearing. You know, when people say that there were reforms in the Farm Bill with regard to SNAP, I kind of cringe because, you know, how did you get to that number? How did you get to this so-called reform when there wasn't a single hearing in the Subcommittee on Nutrition? There wasn't a single hearing in the full Committee on Agriculture. It is important that we make this program as perfect as it possibly can be. Yeah, okay. It is important that we try to make sure that every bit of abuse and fraud is taken away from this program. But there's a right way to do it. You know, we deliberate. That's what we're supposed to do in Congress. You hold hearings. You listen to all different sides. You listen to how you can improve the program, and then we come together and we make those improvements. But we ought to also understand that we need a larger discussion in this country on how to end hunger. We need to understand, as we debate the Farm Bill, that SNAP is one tool in the anti-hunger toolbox. It doesn't solve everything. It doesn't solve everything. What it is one program to help alleviate hunger. What we need, and I've called for, is the President of the United States to bring us all together under the auspices of a White House Conference on Food and Nutrition. Let's talk about this issue holistically. Let's take on some of these big issues of how do you end hunger in America. Why? Let's deal with that. And in convening such a summit, the President could bring all the different agencies in our federal government that have a piece of the pie in terms of battling hunger in America, because not all of these programs fall under one agency. They fall into multiple agencies. Let's bring them all together. Let's figure out how we can better connect the dots. Let's call in our state and local governments. Let's call in businesses, the philanthropic community, our hospitals, our schools, you know, our nutritionists. Let's call in our food banks and our food pantries and all the NGOs that have been out there struggling to end hunger for decades. Let's get everybody in a room together and lock the door until we have a plan. If you want to end hunger, the first thing is you ought to have a plan. And we in this country, quite frankly, do not have a plan. So until we get to that point where we have a plan, what we ought not to do is take away from these programs that at this point do help alleviate hunger. We ought not to undercut the importance of SNAP. We ought not to throw 2 million more people off the program and hundreds of thousands of kids off a free breakfast or lunch program. What do we do? I asked the question when I was reading the CBO numbers about how many people would lose their benefits. My question was, where do these people go? What do they do? What do they do without a food benefit? Do they just show up at food banks? 2 million more people just show up at food banks? Talk to your local food banks. Talk to your local food pantries. They're at capacity. They can't take any more people. This notion that somehow charity will just pick up all the slack is a bunch of nonsense. Talk to the charities. Talk to the churches. Talk to the synagogues. Talk to the mosques. Talk to the food banks and food pantries. They can't handle what they're dealing with right now. And just one final thing, then I'm going to yield to my colleague from Connecticut. I also want my colleagues to understand another thing. Over the years, we have used SNAP as kind of an ATM machine to pay for other programs. And as a result, come November of this year, if we cut nothing else, people's benefits are going to go down. The average family of 3 will lose about $25 to $30 a month. Now, that may not seem like a lot of money to some of my colleagues here in Congress, but $25 or $35 a month might be a week's worth of groceries. It might be what keeps somebody afloat for a week. It is a big deal to somebody who's in poverty, and we ought not to diminish that. We ought not to diminish that. And you know, and I'd also say, you know, it really troubles me when I hear people demonize these programs, you know, and again diminish the struggle of those who need to take advantage of these programs. Listening to some of my colleagues testify before the Rules Committee today, you would think that our entire federal deficit and our debt is all because we have programs like SNAP. They are wrong. They are wrong. You know, SNAP didn't cause the debt that we have right now. What caused the debt are 2 unpaid-for wars that are in the trillions of dollars, tax cuts for wealthy people that weren't paid for, a Medicare prescription drug bill that wasn't paid for, you know, bad economic policies. Not this. Not this. This is a safety net. And it's a safety net that, yes, can be improved, but it's a safety net. And one of the things that we in Congress are supposed to be focused on is how we help people who are in need. Donald Trump doesn't need our help. He's got all the money in the world. He's fine. But there are lots of people who don't live on Wall Street, but who live on Main Street, who are just holding on by their fingertips, who are, you know, in some cases, you know, their Sundays are spent trying to figure out how they're going to just put food on the table for their families. There is not a congressional district in America, not a single one, that is hunger-free. There is not a community in America that is hunger-free. And if you've ever met a child who is hungry, it breaks your heart. And it just shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. We are a better country than that. And so rather than going after this program, rather than going after WIC and SNAP and programs to help poor people put food on the table, we ought to be talking about the larger question about how to end hunger now. And having said that, let me yield some time to my colleague from Connecticut who's been a leader on this issue and who in 2008 helped boost up the nutrition components of the Farm Bill, which made it a better Farm Bill and helped millions of people. So I yield to Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro.
I want to thank my colleague, Congressman